A very good evening to you all, and thank you for, on behalf of Glenisk, making the effort. We know how busy evenings are, particularly family life. So, thank you indeed on behalf of all of us for carving out this precious time. It is an important topic. The wisdom of weaning and fussy eaters is our topic for this evening's Glenisk webinar. And I'm Anna Daly. I'm delighted to be your host. I'm a TV and radio presenter, but most importantly, I'm the mum of three boys, and that's probably it is my most important job. Um, Busy boys, life is busy. The fridge empties quickly. And I'm delighted to be a Glenisk ambassador this year as well. So the Glenisk webinars have become hugely popular and for good reason, because Glenisk want to build that community and educate their community. So anyone who's been part of the webinar before, you'll know that it's quick. We won't keep you longer than an hour. We'll give you really great professional information that you can take away. And of course, you can watch it again later on if there's anything that you have forgotten or you missed. But there's a lot of information out there, and I find that now, and I found it when I was weaning babies as well. So the webinars are about expert insights and honest professional advice. And that leads me nicely to our guest this evening. Aveen Bannon, a very good evening to you.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I'm delighted.
You are an in-demand lady, an expert nutritionist, and a mum of three as well.
Yes, I have three. I have two girls and a boy. So I'm thankfully through the weaning phase of it, and I got through it. They
Yeah,
survived.
you survived.
Um, yeah, but it's different phases of eating with family is always challenging, or just making sure you're doing the right thing, I suppose. But I think now there's almost more pressure than there was when I was weaning my children to be perfect and make sure you get it perfectly right, and you're doing the right thing. So it's good to give a little bit of maybe a reassurance as well.
Of course it is. And also for anyone who's tuned in this evening who is a first time mum or dad, welcome. But also, I don't know whether I'm on my own here, Aveen, but I remember that phase of trying to make everything perfect,
Yeah.
from hygiene standards to variety of food to
Oh, I
just
mean, I even remember at
exhausting
one
when I
point
think
I
about
was like, do I sterilize the saucepan to cook the
it.
vegetables, to do everything? And everything had to be from scratch. And actually, that was with my first, where I tried to do everything perfectly. And she was a disaster to wean. She would just look at me, close her mouth, and have nothing. And she is now my best eater. There's not a vegetable she doesn't eat. There's not a fruit she doesn't eat.
Wow.
And like, she has the best diet in the house. And if I had, I would not have predicted that when I was weaning her. So it kind of, it's not like what they're, I mean, obviously there's a lot of advice on how to prevent fussiness and you'll try everything you can, but they will follow their pathway as well.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
don't overthink the bad eater
Yeah.
or the difficult, tricky one right
Yeah.
now. It doesn't mean
Yeah.
they're like that for life.
Just strong-willed.
Yes, spirited, as my mom
Yes.
says.
Yes. Good to know.
Sure.
Yeah.
We've a lot of questions to get through. There's also, by the way, for all of you joining us this evening, a Glenisk innovation community, which is really interesting. It's not something I've ever come across with any food brand before. And it's much more than just a newsletter or an e-zine. So I'll give you more information before we close off this evening on that, because it's how you can kind of shape the future of food, from flavors and everything else. So I will jump back to that before we close, but I better get through these questions because there were hundreds, if not thousands, of questions came in, Aveen. So we've kind of broken it up into different sections, which I'll jump through if that's okay. Um,
Perfect.
and what the team in Glenisk have done is whittle it down to the most popular questions that came
Oh,
in
great.
and
Okay.
different categories. So getting started with weaning is the first category. Tell me, first of all, Aveen, as someone who's kind of moved through the weaning stage,
Mm.
obviously, my kids are 9, 12, and 14.
Mhm.
At what stage are parents starting to wean their babies?
So, I mean, first of all, to remember that weaning is a phase. It's not a test. Okay. So there's no, you're not going to get graded on this. And the kind of ideal window of opportunity to start weaning is either like no earlier than 17 weeks and no later than 24. So sometimes people are worried it has to be 6 months, and it doesn't have to be an exact time. You look for signals from your child, which will be, they're able to hold their head up, they're like taking more interest in food. But I think more commonly that what you watch out for is if you've noticed after a week they're being fussy and irritable and they don't seem satisfied after their milk, and they're within that window, there's a chance that it might be ready to start weaning.
Okay, brilliant. Well, you've touched on the very first
Yeah.
question of the evening, which is what are the key signs of readiness for starting weaning? So you touched on a couple of those signs, Aveen.
Yeah, so it's a sitting without support. And I mean, obviously, like they mightn't have, but they're able to sit up and kind of support themselves if they can able to swallow properly. Good head control. They're exploring with their mouth. So they're kind of starting to put things in their mouth and their tongue is starting to kind of go, oh, I can do lots of stuff. What else can I do?
Yeah.
And it's getting interested. And you know that when you see the baby just staring at you eating, like they're just following the food. They're like, I'd like to try that too. So they're all signs that they're physically getting ready, and they're ready to be able to kind of physically do it. And then from a hunger's perspective, you're noticing actually they aren't satisfied after their meals. Usually, like maybe one day you go, I'm not too sure, but if it's going on for a week or more, definitely they're ready.
Yes, okay, okay. And I found all those signs kind of almost happen overnight. They're all
Yeah.
just there.
Yeah, it's true. And I mean, mine were all, I think, about the 5 month mark typically. They
Okay.
seem to be about that mark. I know I have friends whose theirs were 6, and I have friends who, because of like say, a bad reflux problem, would have been a little bit earlier, like more like 18, 19 weeks. So it all depends
Okay.
on your own baby.
Of
Yeah.
course. And would boys, girls get there first?
I don't think there's a set, like you kind of we tend
Okay.
to think boys are the hungrier ones, but not
Yes,
necessarily.
exactly
Because
my
yeah,
train of thought.
girls can have good old hearty appetites too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, next question, Aveen, is what foods are best to start with and why?
So some will depend, maybe depend on what stage you're starting. So like say if you're going, and we'll probably touch on baby led, I assume, a little bit further on, but you wouldn't
Mhm.
start that until 6 months. So if you're just before the 6 months, you kind of go more pureed soft. Like ideally we kind of go maybe iron rich foods. We're talking about a fortified cereal or like, lentils or green vegetables kind of or something like that. Carrots are a classic one, or a bit of mashed sweet potato, like just plain things, just one thing. But bear in mind, and I think this is really important to point out, the first, the starting process of weaning, they're just learning how to actually the mechanics of it. Like they're learning to
Mhm.
use their tongue to push it around their mouth. They're learning to push it back to swallow. They're learning to spit it back out at you. They're learning to do all that. The level of nutrition they're getting from that initial phase is very, very little. So it's always like milk first to get like the edge of the hunger off and let them start trying. And some will progress quite quickly. Like some will be like, oh no, I know what to do with this. And
Yeah.
they're straight there, and others will just literally mess and really kind of experience it. So starting at the beginning is like one flavor, something that kind of can be like, quite pureed, kind of very soft initially that they can just play with in their mouth and get used to.
And you have to let them play with it.
You do. You
Move it
have to
around
just
their hand.
accept, like I would say to people, like don't start wiping their hands between while they're eating or cleaning their face or, because even imagine it, like if you're learning that process and someone's at you kind of, doing this to your face, it just suddenly just, you're like, get away, leave me alone. It'll be in their hair. It'll probably be in your hair. You know, you got to embrace it.
Yes, suck
Yeah.
it up.
Suck it
Um,
up.
when should food start to replace milk and how do parents balance the two? That's an interesting one, isn't it?
That's a really good question. I would
Yeah.
say, I mean, realistically, not until they're a year old. Milk is probably their primary nutrition until they're about a year. And at a year, it kind of goes to more 350, maybe to 500 mils. And it's a natural progression. Like it doesn't have to be, we don't have to be calculating it out. So, as they're learning, like they might only be having one meal at 6 months, and then like getting up to 7 months, they may be having like two meals. And then it's like suddenly they're getting up to like 8, 9 months, they're having three meals and a snack. So as the volume of food increases, the milk requirement will naturally reduce.
Hmm.
But the milk is still a really important part of their nutrition process until a year. And that's why it's breast milk or formula, because they're like, they have the iron, they have the probiotics, they have all the nutrients that they need. So, that's where cow's milk is not their sole source of nutrition until over a year. And that's mainly because of iron.
Okay.
So probably the correct answer is a year, but there's less reliance of it kind of gradually.
Of course, and it's child by child, depending
Yeah,
on
absolutely. Yeah.
their patterns, I suppose.
Absolutely.
Someone else asks a very sensible question as well. How do you know when to move on from one meal a day to more meals?
Yeah, so that is another really good one. So initially it'll just be one meal a day, the kind of, and usually it's probably the middle of the day more typically.
Mhm.
What you'll notice if like is that they seem to be like they've learned how to eat that. They're doing really well with it. So it's, they're ready to try something else, and you might try something small later on, maybe at the evening time, or it might be breakfast time in the morning, and you bring in the second meal. Typically by 7 months, most kids will be on 2 meals a day.
Okay.
So you're like that would be kind of a rough like rule of thumb. And then kind of 8, 9 months they're on to the 3 meals. By nine, they're 3 meals and a snack. But I mean, some kids would go from 1 meal to 2 meals within a week, and some might be 10 days, or it'll again depend on your child. But usually it's quite a quick progression.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it okay to combine purees and baby-led weaning? And when should lumpier textures be introduced?
Also, absolutely. And I think probably combined weaning between traditional and baby-led weaning is probably the most common. You know what I mean? Just to kind of, from a practical point of view, never mind anything else.
Yeah.
Um, and sometimes I say if you have puree, say you've puree broccoli, like you might have visibly then the bits of broccoli or pureed carrot bits of, you know what I mean? You could kind of mix both together. Um, but it's absolutely fine to combine them or one meal to be fully pureed or one meal not to be. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be exactly the same every time. It can just depend on what you're doing. But the most important thing is that you are progressing through the textures. So like that, if you start with puree, like it does go to the slightly like lumpier textures, like more mashed, and like by 7 months you're doing that, and then by 8 months, and you are progressing through that. So the choking, obviously, every mother and father has the fear of God in them about the child choking. And a good way to know if it's proper, like for baby led weaning, is if you have your two fingers together. So if you have a cooked carrot and you get it between your fingers and you're able to just mash it like that, that's the same action of your gum. So
Okay.
that's a good way to know that they would be able to manage that. And that would be definitely from, as they're working on from like 6.5, 7 months anyway, they're able to work on that. And that's why baby led weaning, we say do not start until 6 months because
Okay.
you need to be able
Interesting.
to have that kind of action.
And would
Um,
you say that about every lumpy food, I suppose, that you're serving
as
them?
you're progressing through, but
Yeah.
definitely at the beginning, it's like, can you like imagine like the two gums being able to manage that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I remember that being quite scary. Just you going, oh, is it right? Is it not? You're
I
questioning
know.
yourself. I mean, you're questioning
Yeah.
yourself about everything, aren't you? How can parents help babies progress from smooth textures to lumpier foods? And I think you kind of just answered that, didn't you, there by,
Just let it happen organically. Don't try and micromanage it, I suppose. Like you're just doing it very gradually. And
yeah,
sometimes as you kind of progress through the a slightly lumpier texture, like you'll see them like they're like doing all these weird, funny tastes with their mouth as they discover it. And you're kind of like, oh, they don't like it, but they're just going, oh, this is strange, something
yeah,
new. And then they're able to manage it. But it's really important for a couple of reasons, right? So it's really important from the point of view of the tongue development, that the tongue learns to do all the back and forth, around and round, and like it learns all the actions that we require for feeding. And also it's really important to develop through the textures for speech development. So the
of course.
chewing action and then the tongue action. So there's lots of like, and that's why you'll hear us often say it's a developmental phase. It's not just about getting the nutrition in, it's about lots of development from oral, from mechanics, as well as
Yes.
getting the nutrition in.
And there's so much going on, isn't there?
Yeah. And like babies have taste buds in their cheeks. So like they're
Do
able,
do they?
yeah, so that's why like they can taste it in their cheeks. So they get loads of like it's like really exciting. They like
Yeah.
put it around their mouth, they're going, oh my God, it's a taste explosion. So they have it in their cheeks, and then as we get older, it's like just our tongue.
Well, that was my next question, which you've answered. Okay, so they
Awesome.
die away in your cheeks as you grow up,
Yeah, yeah.
obviously. Okay,
Don't
amazing.
ask me when because I don't know when.
I won't ask you
But I
when.
know it does
I'm
happen.
fascinated by it though.
Yeah.
I'm learning too here. This is very interesting. Lots about texture in general. Do babies' taste buds and texture tolerance change over time? You've literally just answered that as well.
Yeah, and I say with the sweet, like so breast milk is sweet, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
you're naturally born liking sweet. So that's why, I mean, historically, like say when I was weaning my first, you would have been like always vegetables first, but like, don't go with fruit first because you want them to get used to the less sweet kind of tasting foods.
Okay.
So it does progress, they get used to it. And that's why even, sometimes you'll see combinations of fruit and vegetables mixed together You're trying to get them used to like, different kind of flavors. But the texture will be a natural, like as you kind of follow the little progression of it, you'll notice that they're able to manage different textures and they don't need all their teeth to do that.
Yes, of
But by
course.
12 months old, a baby should be pretty much able to eat more or less what the family is eating.
Yes. Okay. At 12 months, is that what you
Mhm.
said?
Yeah.
Okay. That's a good benchmark. Um, Someone else actually talking about the cooked carrot sticks here. The last question in this section, actually. When is it the right time to introduce harder foods like cooked carrot sticks to support chewing and jaw development?
So the cooked ones, like softly cooked, like you can do this, it would be like from even seven, like from 7 months or earlier. You know what I mean? If you're doing the baby-led weaning, you can do that in its little small bits and watch them. When it
Brilliant.
gets to harder textures, like you're getting like, a carrot that's needs a bit more of a bite to it, like they need teeth. You know what I mean? You're getting further onto your 9, 10 months kind of territory. But I
Okay.
mean, like if you're doing baby-led weaning, which you can do from 6 months, it's like once they can do that they can have it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, do that test yourself, I guess, for any vegetables, and if it squashes between your fingers,
Yeah.
it's
And I would have always done that just to make sure, just
yeah,
from a peace of mind. Even if I knew, I was like just checking.
yeah, of course. Anything that gives you some peace of mind
Yeah.
while you're
Yeah.
navigating the
Yeah.
journey. We're going to jump on to fussy eaters, Aveen, because
I love
uh,
actually, I'm sorry, I actually do love working with fuzzy ears. Yeah.
I'm guessing a lot of your clients are coming to you with fussy eating children. Is that
Yeah. So fussy eating versus picky eaters, it's a real thing because
now what's the
fussiness.
difference?
So pickiness is like, mm, it's- they actually like it, they just don't want to have it.
Okay.
Right.
It's being
So
discussed.
yeah, it's the what's that what that was it what your mother called them? The spirited child.
Spirited child, yeah.
Um, so with like if a child has a real issue with food, like they have hypersensitivity to food, they have a gag reflex when they think of it, the idea of touching it disgusts them, or they avoid whole food groups, that's like maybe it's an issue. But if
Okay.
it's like the child who you kind of go, okay, like the creche says they're eating everything in creche and then they come home and won't eat anything for me, you're like, interesting. That's a bit more of a fussy eater. So that is a developmental phase as well. Most
Mm.
commonly between 18 months and 3 years, can start from the age of 1. It depends. And usually it's a case of, so babies when they're born, apparently babies don't actually know that they're separate from us until about 18 months. Like they still think they're their extension of mommy. And then one
Mm.
day, like it like dawns on them that, hang on, mum's over there and I'm here. You know what I mean?
Mm.
It just, the penny drops and they realize, hang on, I have a bit of independence here. I can do what I want to do. So it can suddenly be, actually, I don't like the look of that, or I know I prefer to have this, or they can just have a little bit of an episode where they go,
Pushback.
yeah, a
Yeah.
little bit of control, a little bit of, and they're learning to speak and they might be struggling to get all the words out yet and they're frustrated or there's different things. Also, the growth phase is slowed down. So they mightn't be as hungry sometimes. So they're not going to be, there'll be a few days when they're ravenous and then you might notice days when they're less hungry. You know what I mean? So they'll be a little bit up and down with appetite. So with the fussiness is, I'd say, is first of all, the more exposure they have in the 6 to 12 months is really important if you can. And it's like making sure that there's different colors there, different textures, flavors, all of these things are apparent from early on. So they're used to it. It becomes the norm for them. And the brain learns to know that this is the norm and these things aren't scary. So new foods can be a little bit like, I'm not sure, like brain says, no, I don't want to do this, but it's like you learn to understand, you learn to like them.
Mhm.
Um, so with kids like that, the more exposure they've had beforehand, the less likely it is to happen, but they can have had all of the exposure and then have a phase where they decide to be a little bit more headstrong. So what I say there is you keep putting the food on in front of them. Okay, so say, have one or two colors there, never take the color away. If they're throwing a conniption about the color being on the actual plate, put it beside the plate, but have it in their visual eye. So it's
Oh,
like,
that's
look,
very
it's
interesting.
not on your plate, it's here. So just, we met in the middle a little bit. So you're not having a pressure of just one bite, go on, go on, go on. You're not creating, it's neutral, it's a calm, it's like, no, don't worry, that's fine. I just put it here beside you. And that's where those compartment plates can be useful sometimes because, like it's not touching it, it's just there. It can keep it separate, or you can just put it beside the plate. So I would say it's because generally, if you think of it, like most of the fussiness is related to a fruit or a vegetable. So you're just going put it on the side beside it, and then that they can still see it, and you just keep on putting it there because a child needs to be exposed to a food or a flavor up to like maybe 15 times
Okay.
before they actually know if they like it. And that's why if you think of any food that you don't like, you'll notice when you really think about it, you'll go, actually, it's the texture I don't like. It's not the flavor. So why will a kid have something pureed? They love strawberry yogurt, but they don't like strawberries. So they like the flavor of a strawberry, they don't like the texture of it.
Okay. Interesting.
So that's where you're going to keep putting it visually in front of them.
Yes. And in my head, it used to be what I would have heard was 7 times try it before you give up on it. But actually, what you're saying is not necessarily taste it. It's more
It's
have it in
there.
your environment.
Yeah, it's having it there in front of you and going, to learn that the green's not that scary. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Or, it's just trying to look at that. And even with kids, what I would have done with my son, was he was obsessed with Thomas the Tank Engine. So we associated the colors with the different colors of the trains. So like we would call them, and we didn't call them by their name of the vegetable, we just called them by colors. And
Okay.
even getting into the school lunchbox, I would have always said, well, you have to pick two colors for your lunchbox,
Oh,
as
that's
opposed
really
to
good.
necessarily just to try and get away from naming of them, just if
Yeah.
that made a difference or not. But you know what I mean? Just to have a little play with it or fun. Yeah.
That's interesting,
Yeah.
actually. And yeah, it's kind of meeting them in their world, isn't it?
Yeah. Because they're in that magical, magical world. And it's like
Yeah.
suddenly, like Percy's coming along to pick up his whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And their imagination and their play is amazing. So
Yeah.
you're playing with them, I suppose, there.
I know, like the carrot sticks can be, like, oh my God, well, let's have a little sword fight. Oh, he's over inside of the plate.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just trying to keep it there. Yeah.
Keep it relevant for
Yeah.
them. Is it better to persevere with refused food or leave it and return later? You've answered that. Let me jump on.
Yeah.
How many times should you realistically offer the food? You've answered that as well, really. Deciding a child doesn't like it. I mean, that is a fair point, Aveen. At
Yeah.
some point, do you have to go? He's just not going to eat broccoli.
Absolutely. Like, I mean, and let's be honest, like I didn't eat broccoli till I was 23, so I think it's okay to be like a little bit scared of certain vegetables. I do eat it now. But if you have like with something like that, and when I say that 14 times, like that's not 14 days in a row. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? It's like leave it for a while, come back later, leave it for a while, come back later, and they're allowed to not like everything. I
Yes.
mean,
Yeah.
that's okay.
That's okay.
Yeah.
How can parents tell the difference between a sensory issue and a power struggle?
Oh, so I kind of touched on actually, I was just thinking of before was the hypersensitivity. So if it's a real issue that they just literally look at it, they're just like, oh my goodness, like the sight, the smell, their hyper senses. So like we have 8 senses which we need for eating. So we have our sight, smell, touch, hearing, and taste. And then we have a thing called interoception, we have a thing called proprioception, and we have vestibular, which are to do with your inner signals, your environment, and how you're sitting and head kind of controlling your head. So any kid who is very hypersensitive to their surroundings and they suddenly see food and they're like, oh my goodness, they really are restrictive of it, or a whole food group, or a whole texture of foods. Like it's quite dramatic. Or you're
Okay.
getting to the point that you're kind of coming up to like nearly like, we're getting up to like 9, 10 months and we have less than 10 foods. You know what I mean? You're kind of going, you're really noticing that that you might seek help or support to see what's going on. And the power struggle is they ate the dinner in crash and won't eat for you.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Which we can be hard on ourselves about, actually, but they've
Yeah.
probably had plenty of nutrition in the
Exactly. And they
week.
were they weren't tired, they were with friends, it was relaxed, it was a bit of, a
Yeah.
social event. And
Yeah.
they've come home now and they're tired.
Yes, and they're
Yeah.
overly familiar with parents versus teachers or,
Yeah.
people in
Exactly. Yeah.
authority in their mind, I
Yeah.
suppose.
Yeah.
Okay, let me jump on to veg variety and balance in this section, Aveen. How can parents encourage babies and toddlers to eat more vegetables, especially when fruit is preferred? So that comes back to that sugary bit. They'll always opt for
They'll
the
always pair. So like
big.
two fruit a day is kind of enough generally for kids. And the way like the food pyramid now, we're talking like 5 or 7 a day for adults. Like for kids like that, like at the weaning phase, if you're getting in 2 veg and 2 fruit a day, you're doing really well. Like we're not trying to get the perfect 5 a day in here. You know what I mean? These are
Yes.
learning the process. So I would say is If they're not great in the veg or they're kind of pushing back from it, um, you could mix it with a bit of fruit to make it taste a little bit more palatable to them. Um, offer it with other familiar foods and just keep putting it there, just kind of have it there in their visual eye lines that eventually they will kind of pick it up. But like from the age of 6 to 12 months, like they just see, they've no opinions on it.
Hmm.
Opinions come later. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. Like if they're not keen on veg at the moment, at the beginning, it's purely because it just doesn't taste as nice as that. And they're like, why, that's nicer. So you could just mix a bit of like apple in with your carrot, or you could like pear and carrot, or you can do loads of little combinations that just, and then gradually reduce the fruit out of that and have more vegetable.
Yeah, because I would have done a lot of hiding food and things, just to
Yeah.
get certain foods into them.
Yeah.
You know,
But I mean, definitely when they get older, like that's, that's
we're still
given.
doing it.
Yeah.
Someone else is asking Aveen about fruit. Obviously, is great,
Mm.
but there's a concern around teeth. Is there the acid?
Not for fruit, no. Like oh, you'd
Okay,
have to be eating a huge amount of fruit for that. But juices, yes.
okay,
You know what I mean?
interesting.
You wouldn't be encouraging juices, but fruit we wouldn't be, no.
Okay,
Yeah.
what are the simple ways to add color and variety without overwhelming a child?
Keep it to one or two. Keep it simple. So it doesn't have to be Instagrammable. It just needs to be something that is quite simple and mirror to your own intake. Like if you're having, we keep on talking about broccoli, so let's talk about something else. You're having
Yeah.
cauliflower and carrots. Just that's what you're having with them. You know what I mean? Just keep it simple and like just one or two doesn't matter. Like don't feel like it needs to be that they're eating every vegetable under the sun. It's just trying to get exposure. And I would say is be careful, like there's ones that you don't like. Remember, you do offer them to the kids as well.
Yeah.
But kids are much less fussy about repetitiveness as well. Like they're quite happy to have the same thing a few days in a row. Like that's okay. We tend to be more, as adults, we're a bit more fussy about that and think about it more.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, but I think with the kids, it's just like one or two is plenty.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. Can I go off piece from the questions for a moment? You mentioned Instagram. It doesn't have to be Instagrammable or
Yeah.
Instagram perfect. Do you think, because I think we're all a little bit guilty of this, I see things on Instagram, whether it's related to food, diet, children, house, anything. The standard can be very high, and you end up going,
Yeah.
"Oh, that my life doesn't look like that."
Yeah. Like why isn't my
So
child eating olives and hummus? Kind of.
yes,
But yes, and also that it doesn't look so perfect. Um, and I think that's where I was actually think at the beginning was saying there's so much more pressure now to feel like you're doing everything perfectly, and that's the saying to if this is a part of their developmental phase, it's not a test.
yeah,
All right,
yeah,
so it's keeping it simple. So if it's a little bit of shredded chicken, so say for chicken for baby-led weaning, you've breast chicken, you get two forks and you shred it to separate it. And if you've got that little bit of mashed potato and well-cooked carrot batons, like that's a perfect dinner. There
yes.
doesn't need to be anything else added to that. So it's just trying to kind of reassure people that, like, for starters, the body is just going, I want amino acids, I want glucose, and I want lipids. And if it has some vitamins and minerals, that would be amazing. You know what I mean? It's not worried about so much how it looks. And if it's too complicated in a presentation, that could be overwhelming for a child.
Hmm.
You
Yeah,
need
and as
them
you
to,
say, don't be afraid to do that very well-rounded meal several nights in a row.
yeah, absolutely fine. Yeah.
How do you rotate meals so food doesn't become boring? I think you've kind of touched on that as well, that they don't have the same standard as us.
No, like so when parents ask me this question, I normally say to them, okay, like have maybe like a rotation of two different breakfasts and
Yeah.
maybe a rotation of three or four lunches and maybe like four or five dinners. And like if you've got that going for a little while, that's absolutely fine.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Just doesn't have to be something different every night because yes, they're not half as fussy.
Yes, of course.
Mm.
Okay. Aveen, someone else says, how important is it to keep offering foods even if a child goes off something they previously liked?
Give it a
Kids can
break
be
and come
very
back.
quick to go, I don't like that. And it'll be because, Freddie beside
Yeah.
them in the creche or
Or
at
like,
school.
have you ever
Or,
had that like with the blueberry, right? Where you're eating blueberries and you get one really squishy one and it just kind of goes, oh, right? That can happen to a kid and then they're like, oh my God, blueberries are dead to me.
yeah.
One let me down and now they're all dead to me. So sometimes it's just to give it a bit of a break and then let them kind of almost forget about it and come back to it.
Okay. Or
Um,
present them in a different way.
yeah. So particularly when they're younger, like when they get to having peers, they're definitely influenced by what other people are saying or doing. But when they're younger, it can be, hang on a second, I had him yesterday and he wasn't good. So
Yeah.
that's
It's
it.
gone.
Just give it
Yeah.
a break. Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm.
Do you find I find with my children, speaking of fussy eaters, they'll think their lunch is absolutely fine until they compare it to the person beside them in school, and then they'll come home going, "I want chili in a flask,"
Or like
or
I've
"I
had
want soup and a roll."
pasta and pesto.
Yeah.
I was like, really? So, but I've also had one of mine. It's funny. She always says her ham sandwich tastes different in school to how it tastes at home.
Really?
And that's what she used to say when she was younger. And I was like, does it? But basically, what she wanted was something different. But it was
Yeah.
like her way of explaining it was just different. And I was like, kind of going, I don't. And then I went, I'm going to let this go and we'll just do a different lunch for a couple of, we'll just do something different.
Yeah. Yeah.
But again, that comes back to the pressure as well of the lunch boxes of people nearly making shapes out of the sandwiches or trying to make it. And yes, that's wonderful if you can do it. But most of parents are working or have, it's hard to do
Flying out the
it.
door in a hurry, trying
Yeah.
to cobble together whatever's
And no
there.
one's doing that for our sandwiches.
No. Turned out fine, Aveen. We are on to sweet treats. Um, how should parents introduce sweet foods without creating a strong preference for them?
So you'll find like sweet treats. So like a snack is something that offers nutrition that's part of your daily diet. So like the ideal snacks are your kind of, yogurt, your fruit, bits of cheese, vegetables, maybe hummus if they like, that kind of thing, right? So
Mhm.
they're offering nutrition, whereas a treat is something that may or may not offer nutrition, but tastes nice.
Yeah,
And for a young child, a strawberry can be a treat because it tastes sweet.
yeah.
So their association of treats for a while will be probably fruit or like, natural sweetness. There was a oh my God, there was a cartoon years ago, I used to call it sports candy. And it was like the idea was sports candy was actually fruit.
Great, brilliant.
Okay. When they get more aware or they're out and about, that's when they start to kind of notice that there's things like, be it ice cream or chocolate or whatever else. And I think most people, I don't know if you found this, that their first like treat food would have probably come from a family member.
I was just about to crowbar that question
Yeah.
in. It's not even on the list, or maybe it is
Yeah.
coming up, but it can be a tricky one to navigate grandparents treating grandchildren
Well, the
or
thing is,
or kind auntie or uncle or whatever, you know.
yeah, and I suppose what happens is that there's nothing wrong with the children having a treat, but like usually up until the age of 12 months anyway, we're like going like, don't add salt to food, don't add sugar to food. Like we don't need that extra sweetness. When they're a bit older, like yes, if they get a little bit of ice cream, it's just like watch the portion size of it, or it is like they're only getting a little bit because a little bit will go a long way and they'll enjoy it. But what you can't escape is them going somewhere else or being exposed and suddenly the word treat is used and the language around food is so, so, so important. Um, so with treat food, like I would kind of trying to like not ever discuss that this is bad for you or this is like, how we would have discussed if there was like too many treats in the house. I'd be like, listen, it's really not good for your teeth. I'd never go into it in relation to weight or health or being a bad thing to do. So I was trying to get away from negative language. But most people, you can kind of get away with any sweet stuff in their diet until they're probably about 18 months.
Okay.
Then I think it's harder because they'll get it somewhere.
Yeah.
And then it just becomes a thing. But like with it, it's like just be sensible, hold the firm line, just in terms of don't be afraid to say no. My main concern with sweet stuff can be is if it's too much, it just displaces the intake of the healthier stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. And that treats are never given when you're hungry. And this applies for adults too. I'd always say to people, a treat is something that you have in addition to your daily plan that's just a treat. It's not something there to offer nutrition. So it's not given as a snack or as a, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's something separate to your day-to-day eating. So then it's like your normal eating, and then you have a treat sometimes, like all of us do.
Hmm.
And then it's like inappropriate portion sizes for them. And it's not a huge deal made about it.
Okay, yes. You've touched on an answer for the next question, which is what's the best response when toddlers in particular are demanding biscuits or sweet snacks, but they refuse their meals? I mean, I still have that here.
Yeah.
Or they're
Or the
looking, they
classic one, I
haven't
used to
finished
say,
their
she'd
dinner,
say,
but
no, my dinner tummy is full, but my
yeah,
other tummy is empty. I was like, really?
I do that myself sometimes if I'm honest.
You're like, yes, that sounds familiar. Um, and hold the line because the thing is, like a 2-year old, like the minute you kind of go, oh, okay, then you've got to hold the line and kind of go, no, that's not a dinner food.
Yes, it
That's
doesn't fall into dinner. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's just not a dinner food.
Is it better for a child to eat very little food or rely too much on sweet foods?
There's no real. That is like what you look at there is your child, how's their growth, how's their nappies, are
Yeah,
they thriving, right? So, no, too little food is never better than too much of anything, like because you got to have enough nutrition. Um, if you're talking about a child who like won't eat because they want sweet stuff, that's probably going back to kind of trying to really reinstate just and not all an overhaul of all the meals, but trying to reinstate meal by meal, getting back into a healthier pattern.
yeah. It's a
Um,
very tricky one though, isn't it? If you're
a very
worried
tricky
about
one.
the child getting some kind of energy from food, you
And
know,
to watch with those kids, because sometimes with those kids will over rely on milk and they're just filling up on milk and then they're having so much milk they're not hungry.
okay.
So then they're not that hungry, so then like they won't have it. Or the thing is if a child is not eating, like and this again applies for all of us, adults and children, if you have a long period of not eating and you're hungry, you'll only ever crave a carbohydrate. You're only ever going to crave a fuel source.
So true,
I
yeah.
mean, so if there's big long gaps like that. So it's trying to find like usually with those kids there is something savory and that they would like, be it a cereal or a pasta or, bread or something. There's another format of food for them to have, which
Yes.
is absolutely fine. And make sure they're just getting their kind of satisfaction from that.
Okay.
Yeah.
How much fruit or yogurt is reasonable in a day for a toddler?
So again, I kind of go with maybe your two fruit a day, two servings.
Hmm.
Yogurt, one or two. It depends on what they like. Some you get yogurt monsters. That's great because I'm like, yeah, like calcium, we got vitamin D, we got everything in there. Um,
Yeah.
and that's absolutely fine. But yeah, that's okay. That's not excessive. And again, when you ask those questions or you think of those questions, what you have to ask yourself is it displacing an intake of something else? But that's a healthy food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. How should parents think about sugar sweeteners and no added sugar claims? I assume that's on packaging, Aveen.
Yeah, so no added sugar will mean the sugar is not added. That's the kind of so that's you kind of know that's it's not added, that's fine. Artificial sweeteners wouldn't be something we'd encourage in children's diets or toddlers' diets. So I
Mm,
go with a natural food. So if it says no added sugar and it's a natural food, so I'm thinking examples of that probably would be yogurt, wouldn't they? They'd be the most common ones you say no added sugar, that wouldn't have sugar added into it. Or
yes.
you might get you're not going to get a breakfast cereal that says no added sugar unless it's porridge. Um,
Yeah.
but you're thinking of that it's a naturally occurring thing. But I'd always rather go natural rather than like artificial sweeteners we wouldn't encourage. And even in artificial sweeteners and drinks, you wouldn't encourage below the age of 3.
Okay. Well, that's a good rule of thumb right
Yeah.
there.
Mhm.
Nutrition, iron, and protein is the next section. And someone asks, how can parents ensure babies get enough iron from food, especially without supplements?
So dietitians are obsessed with iron in babies' diets.
Mm,
And mainly because the baby has enough for the first 6 months from the mother's supply and then is relying on it from food. So they'll either get the majority of their iron is going to come from their formula or their breast milk. So they are getting a good like a chunk of it from there. It's introducing iron-rich foods like red meats or lentils, beans, or is a good way to kind of get in as well. Fortified breakfast cereals are really handy. So you'll find that like I used to use Ready Brek a lot because it was no added sugar, but it was fortified, or like Weet-Bix or those type of cereals because they naturally have iron in them.
yes.
And they're suitable for kids. And then green vegetables, if they're having some green vegetables in their diet. So if they have green veg, if you have fortified breakfast cereal, if you're concerned, you're maybe getting red meat in once, twice a week. And then there's like they're having their formula and their breast milk. That's the main thing. So they're still relying, again, that comes back to that previous question, like milk is still the main source of nutrition until a year old.
Yeah.
And the reason we start weaning really from 6 months is from a developmental phase, but it's also to get the iron in.
Yeah. And that is the foundation, isn't it? The milk. At least you know that
You
they're
know
getting
they're
it.
getting it. Yeah.
Are oats suitable for babies, and what role do they play nutritionally?
Absolutely, oats are great, and you can introduce them from day one. So they're a really gentle form of fiber, and they contain a fiber called beta glucan. It's really nice and gentle on the gut, so it's can keep them regular and give it like help with the gut microbiota. But it's also just it's great to get them used to oats, so that hopefully you may have a child who will like porridge, and
Yes.
to try and introduce it from that point of view. But you can mix it in, and you'll see like even like an overnight oats type thing, or in with the kind of mix it with milk, mix it with yogurts. It can be warm, it can be different things, but oats are great. And we would kind of encourage people to include them from probably one of their first weaning foods.
Okay, brilliant. And Glenisk have the new baby fromage frais with oats available.
Yes, exactly. Which is like almost like a little mini kind of version of like an overnight oats, like you know what I mean? So there's a small amount of oats in it, but it's got the yogurt, so it's a nice nutritious snack. Yeah,
Brilliant. Okay. But
they look good.
these are really like life lessons. Do you know, like I'm thinking about myself with porridge oats and yogurt every morning I have for the last couple of years. And it's probably my healthiest meal of the whole day. But they're like habits for life, aren't they?
They are, and that's where it's like you're teaching because the first 2 years of life with nutrition is you're teaching them the tongue action, you're teaching them the development of the mouth, the skills, and able to get their speech development, learning to eat and all the process that comes. But you're learning them, teaching them the exposure to be able to enjoy food.
Yeah.
The food is about nutrition, but it's also learning to enjoy it and all that it has to offer. And that's hugely important.
Of course, yeah. And you want them to have such a positive relationship with
Yeah.
food, don't you? Food is wonderful, it's joyous,
Mhm.
it's to be
Yeah.
celebrated. We look forward to our meals. And you want that to start early, I suppose. How much dairy should babies and toddlers be having, Aveen?
So up until a year, they're obviously still getting their milk from the breast of the formula, and then cow's milk can be introduced as in cereal or mixing up with if you want to, or it can be used as a yogurt or a cheese if that like that can be introduced. So you're kind of building up that way. So from a year on, you're talking your 3 to 5 servings of calcium-rich foods a day.
Okay.
So that will be your cow's milk, yogurt, cheese. Tinned fish offers a calcium as well. And kind of like just getting it in from a normal, like the same way you would for adults.
Yes,
I
of
mean,
course. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. There's so
So,
much, isn't there, that's just
yeah.
transferable into.
Calcium is one we're worried, like as dietitians, we worry a little bit about at the moment. We feel like it's become a little bit like out of vogue. We're trying to get it back in vogue.
Really, isn't it
Yeah.
kind of crazy that things like that become in
Yeah.
or out of
It
trend?
just has become, I think with a big increase in plant milks and
That's the
different things.
protein popularity, is it?
Yeah, the protein phase and just people having a perception that maybe, or yogurts, people thinking that they're not healthy, and you're like, actually, they really are. Like, they're such an important part. But for dairy, it's interesting for dietitians. We're thinking about calcium, but we also think about like phosphate, magnesium, B12, iodine. There's so like it's such a powerhouse of an encapsulation of nutrients.
Hmm.
That's called the dairy matrix because it has so much. So that's why we would tend to like it. I think it's such a great nutritional source. But obviously there are non-dairy sources of calcium too. But for babies, it's mainly coming from their milk. And then for
Okay.
toddlers, is that the milk stays in and then you're getting more additions from food.
Brilliant. Okay. We've two more sections to get through in the next 15 minutes or so. So we're on time, Avian, I
We're on
think.
time. We're doing good.
The second last section is allergens, dairy, and special considerations. And
Mm.
I think this question was asked a lot. When and how should allergens like nuts and dairy be introduced? Because these rules can change regularly, can't they?
They
Be
too were
buying.
different with each baby I had.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I'm glad you agreed with that
Yeah.
because it's really confusing.
Yeah. So like with my eldest, it was like, no, nothing. And then no, so now there's no restriction. You just and you just include them. So what we'd say with the allergens is, right, it's okay to include them in the diet. Now, not whole nuts, obviously, not until the age of 5 because of the risk of choking.
Yeah.
But with other foods, so your common ones like egg, milk, soya, fish, nuts. I'm forgetting one, but that's okay. But there's like all of those more common ones. And what we would say is that you introduce them like separately. You know what I mean? Don't do it all in one day or all in one
Yes. So
week.
you can identify if there's a
Identify it, yeah.
reaction.
So like I had one child who had egg allergy,
Okay.
and it was a fairly stark reaction when they had it.
And what was the reaction, Aveen, can I ask?
Projectile vomit
Oh,
after like a
really?
nail full of, and I went, oh, that was weird. I gave them some more.
Mm.
And then she vomited again. And I went, actually, maybe that wasn't a good idea. So anyway, grew out of the egg allergy, was fine. But like that was, you knew the reaction. So with allergies, they can be quite a sudden reaction, like a literally expel it. Or sometimes, people worry about kids with eczema and different things, but like that's not necessarily the food. So it's really careful to not immediately blame the food
Right.
and it must be this and starts chopping and changing because that can be to do with teething or like other factors. It can be topical. Like there's so many other things that it can be. So allergies, like there's phases of severity of them. But the advice would be that no, you include them from day one, but you just kind of maybe do it gradually one by one. So if there were to be a reaction, you would know what it is.
Okay.
And even if there's allergy history in the family, the advice is still now to include it. Gluten is also another one. So like gluten, you can include gluten from the start of weaning if you want to, but again, we would say to do it gradually. So
Yes.
like it would be one serving maybe like, in week one and then maybe two in week two and just gradually bring it in that way.
Okay, brilliant. So someone says, should families with celiac disease avoid gluten during weaning?
No, because the only way you're ever going to find out if that child has celiac is to give them gluten.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So you bring it in as normal, and if then they show signs or symptoms, they would be tested, and then but you can't have a positive test without having the antibodies. So you gotta see.
Okay, so you got to go in with it.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it okay for babies to be raised vegetarian? And what needs extra attention nutritionally?
So yes, if it's done correctly, absolutely. And sometimes you might need a bit of support with it, but it depends. If you're a really kind of good balanced vegetarian yourself and you're well used to it, that's okay.
Yeah.
So the key nutrients you're looking at are omega-3. You're looking at iron. And B12 would be another one. And the main thing you have to watch out with the vegetarians with diet with children is not to make it too high in fiber. It's like a baby's fiber requirements are your age plus 5 grams. Like a baby only needs about 5 or 7 grams of fiber a day. And we
Okay.
need about 35 grams. You know what I mean? Just to put into
And we
perspective,
need what?
about 25 to 35 grams.
Okay.
So it's like really, really different. And the main reason is if it's too high in fiber, what can happen is the baby's full so they don't eat as much. Or the second thing is it can inhibit the absorption of certain vitamins and minerals, like particularly iron. There's phytates in fiber that bind to the minerals. So with the vegetarian diet, I say is be careful to include non-fiber sources of protein. So things like tempeh, tofu, foods that don't have, and it depends if they're vegetarian, they might be including dairy and eggs, in which case they're going to get their B12.
Hmm.
I would use the fortified breakfast cereals just to help it along.
Okay.
But absolutely, like once you're doing it, once you're mindful of those things, omega-3 is the one that's tricky because a lot of the plant sources of omega-3 are very high in fiber.
Okay.
So you don't want to give too much fiber. So the omega-3, you can always give a supplement as well. Like there's nothing wrong with doing that. But you could be giving them tiny amounts of little brown down seeds and stuff like that. But it's just it's probably already going to be a higher fiber diet, so you just have to be careful.
Yeah, of course. Are we seeing more of that, Aveen? Vegetarian parents possibly
We
bringing a child home?
were, and now we're not seeing as many.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
there was definitely a little bit of an up, and now there's a down. I think mainly because parents were just kind of going maybe A, concerned that the child might not get enough, and B,
Mm.
going maybe let the child, have their own choice. I don't know, but vegetarianism, like if the vegetarian is including dairy, there doesn't tend to be as much of an issue, if you know what I mean, in terms of
Yeah.
getting the balance because you get with the fiber. Um, Vegan would be one that you need support with.
Okay. Yes, of
I
course.
would like just if I was a parent doing it, I'd go, okay, I want to sit down and plan this out with someone to make sure I'm getting it right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Are oats suitable for babies, and at what age can they safely be introduced during weaning? You kind
From
of
the
touched on
beginning.
that
We
earlier
touched
on
that,
from the
yeah,
beginning.
from the beginning. Yeah.
Brilliant. And how do oats support gentle digestion and gut health, especially for babies with sensitive tummies?
Because oats are soluble fiber, so soluble fiber is like it kind of forms like a jelly-like structure in the gut. So it's almost like nice and soft. So just help things like it slows down digestion to help us absorb our nutrients, and it's like nice and soft to help things. I'm actually doing the actions like
Oh, you are, I
to go
know.
through.
Very impressed.
Um, so oats would be the one like, for sensitive, even for any, again, children or adults, if your gut is sensitive, oats tend to be nice and gentle. And if you want, you can actually, if you're worried about your child having a sensitive tummy, get the more pinhead oat mills, the more ground, like the more work that's done to it before they have it, the easier it is in the gut.
Okay.
If you think of it, that way.
Yes.
So like
Yeah.
you could just kind of make sure it's like finer. It's not like jumbo oats, like they're nice and fine.
Yes, of course. Okay. Last section, reassurance for parents. We've titled it. What is your number one piece of advice for parents feeling anxious or overwhelmed by weaning?
First thing I would do is kind of just take a deep breath, right, first of all. But sorry, so what happens is we get into this what if conversation. So what if they're going to choke? What if they're not having enough iron? What if, right? When we find ourselves getting into that what if cycle, we kind of just take a stop and go, okay, the facts are my child needs some food. And we just simplify it. So just go back to what I was saying about whether it's the shredded chicken with a bit of mash and the carrot. Like that is perfect. We can, how to feed yourself. So you've gotten, you've managed to get here and you've managed to have a baby.
Yeah.
So you've gotten through all this way. So you know how to feed yourself. So kind of just trust it and go, this doesn't have to be perfect. And it's okay if they don't like everything. And I can use like cereal, yogurt, no, if you're overwhelmed with cooking and having to do everything from scratch, it's okay to use commercial products. There's nothing wrong with doing a bit of a mix and match. Uh,
Yeah.
just take a breath and kind of go, you know what? What I'm going to do this week is work on the dinner of let's go back to my chicken, whatever, but the one dinner and say, I'm going to have that dinner and maybe one other. Like simplify it and go, let's manage two dinners this week. Okay, great. I'll bring in a third one next week. Just take it slowly. The child, once they're getting food, they're fine.
Yes.
But just,
And I often think, I can't remember who said this to me before, but it stayed in my head. If you're a parent worrying about doing things correctly, you're probably doing a great job already, whether it's food or anything else.
yeah. And my dad always has a great expression. He used to say, don't try to make a happy child happier. I always think that's really good.
Yeah, that's great.
You know
That's
what I mean?
great.
It's just
I'm
like,
going to steal that.
yeah.
Someone asks about some advice for parents and how we can stay calm as parents and positive when meal times feel stressful.
Well, if they had the solution for that, that would be amazing. Because you're going to have days where it's great and you're fun and you're like, you're Mary Poppins in the kitchen and you're all having a great time and you're managing it really well. And there's going to be days and you're tired and they're not playing ball and you're in a rush to go somewhere else and you just want to scream. Or
Yeah,
you've prepped something, you've gone to loads of effort to make something and they've just like chucked it on the floor and you're like, what do I do? And it's like, again, to take the deep breath and kind of go, like, they're learning and they think they're playing.
yeah,
They're just having a laugh. They're like, this is great
yeah.
crack. You know what I
It
mean?
does
So,
feel, if I'm honest, like when you go, the more effort as a parent you put into a meal, the less they tend to like it.
yeah. Children like simplicity.
Yeah,
They like to know what they have and they like to be able to play. So it's like that idea of kind of going, the anxiety around the choking thing, I 100% think like keep on doing this thing with your hand to reassure yourself, like it's okay, I'm sitting with them, it's fine. Okay. Um, if a child is coughing, they're not choking.
okay,
So the gag reflex is natural and they'll put the fear of God into you that they'll do that and then they just come back and they're fine. But if they're able to cough, they're not choking.
not joking. It's the silence that you need to watch for, isn't it?
Silence is what you watch out for.
Yeah,
So, even that, knowing that can be like, okay, they're coughing, they're fine, and it went down, or they tried to swallow too much, or they did something like that. But if you are feeling like, on the days that you know that you might be under time pressure, like it's usually best to go with a quick and simple solution.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't try and do it all.
Yes.
You
It's
know,
not the day to make everything perfect.
yeah, like yourself, you've got three boys and you're gone to sports and activities and the soccer and everything in the evening times. Like they're the nights in our house where they're the pasta and pesto nights
Yes.
because
Yeah. And
dinner's
it could be
done.
beans on toast, to be honest with you. It's just,
Yeah, I've no problem with that. I'm like, absolutely, ravioli is like a godsend in our house because it's just like done in 3 minutes with the bought sauce and they've
yeah,
dinner and they've gone. So, we seem to be more relaxed at doing it when they're older, but when we're babies, we think it has to be
really perfect.
really perfect. So I think have a couple of quick go-to easy options for yourself.
Go easy on yourself.
Yeah,
The big takeaway here,
doing
isn't
your
it?
best. Yeah.
A great question and a very important one for this whole discussion tonight, Aveen, is when should parents seek professional advice about fussy eating? So, what's the point where you go, okay, I've done my best, I now need some guidance on
So
it?
like I mean, I would say like, there like there's less than 10 foods. Or you've noticed that there's an entire food group missing. You know what I mean? So there's like they're only having all beige and there's nothing else happening. And when you try and introduce that, there's almost like an aversive reaction to it. Um, so there's different methods of supporting parents when they're going at those points. So it's very early on.
Hmm.
Um, you can do play with food and you basically like, and I mean, I wasn't joking with my sword fights. Like you make train
Yeah,
lines of
yeah, you
things.
make
You
it
actually,
fun.
you make it fun. You play with food and make it fun. Or like when they're older, there's more like a discussion point with them and trying to figure out if a child is like gets distressed by something being they can't verb, they're distressed by seeing it, the touch, they can't do anything with it. There's something going on there that they're like nervous of. It's not uncommon for a kid after like say bad ear infections or a throat infection or something to not want to eat for a little while
Okay.
or to be off their food because they remember that it hurt. And
Yes.
it's just go a bit softer for a while and they'll come back again. Like so like give them a bit of time. But if it's an extended period of time, you feel the choice of food is very little. And when I say choice of food, I'm talking simple foods. You know what I mean? That it's not like they're not having a lasagna. You know what I mean? It's like they're not having the plain in
Basics.
front of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would ask, like, always check. And the main thing to do is watch if their growth is off or their nappies are drier or like there's distress with their abdomen or like anything like that. The main thing is if there's faltering growth.
Okay. Yes. That's your,
That's the main thing. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. One last question, Aveen. How do parents know? I think this is so important because you know yourself, we're bombarded with advice and it's coming
Mhm.
from in this multimedia world, it comes from every angle at us. It's not just
Yeah.
the shopping aisle, is it? In the supermarket, it's everywhere. How do parents know that they're actually doing the right thing despite conflicting advice online?
So I'm going to give you one statistic with
Mm,
only 2% of people giving nutrition advice on Instagram are qualified professionals to give it. So from that's
shocking.
one
I
message,
sorry, I'm
okay?
laughing. It's shocking.
Yeah. And nutrition professionals like dietitians, they always look to see if they have RD behind the name. If the RD is there, it means they're a registered dietitian.
Okay.
Okay. And they're advised to give advice, and they only have people's best interests at heart. They want to give the best nutrition advice. So when there's conflicting information, we would get this a lot that like it's like, oh, it's we just disagree with somebody because of X, Y, Z. It's like, no, we want the best for people and we want people to have a good relationship with food. We don't want people overzealous worrying about things. We want people making informed, correct decisions
Mhm.
and knowing that it doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
Or our goal is to try and make it, as good as possible.
And
So
when you say the RD beside their name, would that even be on social media, on TikTok, on Instagram?
if a dietitian is on Instagram, she will have an RD behind her name.
Okay. That's really, really interesting. I never knew that before.
Yeah, yeah, you look now, you'll see they all go like they
I'll
have.
start unfollowing people. Oh, it's
And I
great to
say,
know
and I
though.
just say as well, sometimes some people are out there giving advice and it's with the best of intention. Unfortunately, they're just not looking at the big picture. Like certain things, like how we look at foods is always the big picture of like when I talk about like milk, I'm like, oh, there's like X, Y, like there's a multitude of things, multitude of reasons why. It's not usually the most obvious that people think about.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
sometimes what happens is people take something out, they avoid something, they're like, oh, but now you're missing out on X, Y, Z.
Or there'll be a media story of some kind, and it will be through the prism of one particular perspective. And as you say, well meaning, but not necessarily helpful for
Yeah,
everyone.
exactly. Yeah.
Um, Avi and I have jumped all over the world with those questions, and you've answered them all so well. Like I said at the start, Glenisk are building a community and they want to be able to give their customers and this community expert advice, professional opinion, and lots of takeaways. And you've done all of that for us this evening, Aveen. So thank
Okay.
you very much
Well,
for
I've
being
enjoyed it. It's been great.
great chatting. I know I've dodged dinner time and everything.
I
And
know. I'm like
football
happy.
tickets.
I'm hoping mine's ready for me when I go in.
I must do this more often.
Yeah.
During the chat, by the way, I mentioned the Glenisk product. It's the new baby Fromage Frais with oats. So you talked about the importance of oats, Aveen.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
obviously that's nicely tied into the chat. They never asked me to say that, but it's a nice segue to mention
Yeah.
the actual product, and it's brand new. It's on the shelves. I said at the start as well, there's a Glenisk innovation community. So this is a space where parents can join early access to new product launches, opportunities to taste products before they hit the shelves, invitations to webinars like this one, and lots more that we have planned, Q&A surveys, and your chance, I suppose, to shape the future of food in Ireland, being part of it. So the details are on the website. I'll throw a link up on my Instagram after this webinar. And yeah, feel free to join up to that community, especially if you're part of this evening. It's right up your street in terms of where you're at in your life. Also keep an eye on your email and your inbox because we will be announcing the winner of the one-to-one with yourself, Aveen. And I know you have a very long wait list.
That's fine, but I'll make sure that they won't have to wait that long.
Straight to the top, straight to the top of the
Yeah.
queue. And the product giveaway as well. So all of that will go into your inbox. Thank you very much to everyone for joining us this evening. Your evenings are precious, and we know that as parents in particular. So thank you indeed for carving out the time to be with us on behalf of Glenisk. It's been a pleasure. And Aveen Bannon, have a lovely evening.
Yes, you too. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. See you on the
Bye.
next one, guys.